So let's talk about CSS animations. I'm pretty sure you all got the idea about what an animation is, right? So you got something on the screen, could be a div, could be a box, could be an image, could be text even, right? And then the text or the content keeps moving, jumping in, you know, all these sort of things, right? That's what we call an animation in the web. Technically speaking, it is important to differentiate between different types of animations, and that's what I would like to do today. I would like to introduce you to, first of all, what we call transitions, and then animations. Yeah, so there are two ways of moving things in the web, yeah, using transitions and using animations. So we'll present the same example using both techniques, and we'll obviously analyze pros and cons. Before going any further, let me just prepare my my layout as usual. So you know I got my I'll have my JavaScript on the left, and then my CSS, if I manage to snap it, on the right. Hello, come on MacBook Pro. Eventually, yeah. You see, I got my JavaScript and my CSS. I hope the screen is readable enough. So someone is trying to join the session. All right. So where are we? Yeah. So we got nothing, right? Just a basic title. Hi. I'm gonna probably even remove it. So I'll show you. Why is it so difficult to change the screen? Sorry, give me a second, guys. Let's see if it works any better. Yeah, there you go. All right. So I would like just to prepare the example by displaying maybe a box, class name box, yeah. And now I'm gonna add some text on it, like hello CSS. And now on my CSS, I'm gonna play with some basic properties. So I got my box, and then you know, so for instance, background color. Give me a nice background color, guys. Pink, that's one. Got pink background color, maybe some padding, and maybe what else? Some font size. I don't really care, right? And now let's talk about the dimensions of the box. So for instance, imagine that we want to display a square of 100 pixels on each side. So width 100 pixels, and then height 100 pixels. So let's see what we got on the browser. Here is our box. Let me zoom it in a bit. Yeah. Cool, nothing particularly exotic about it. So let me present you how the way transitions work. Imagine that whenever I hover the box, whenever I put my mouse on top of it, I want to expand the width of the box. You've done something similar with conflicts. As you remember, task number 3 or 4, no, I think it was 6 actually, we managed to animate the overlay of the movie titles. Yeah? So does anyone remember how can I change the width of my box whenever I put my mouse on top of it? How do I do that? Max? Whatever you want to change, right? That's correct. You see, box, and then this is what we call a pseudo selector, yeah? Because hover will only apply, oh, what the hell is that? Hover will only apply whenever my cursor, my mouse, is on top of the box. So look, that's the default state. When I hover, pop, 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 pop. You see? So that's the way you can change the size of the box. But now, you may argue that that effect is a bit aggressive, yeah, because the box changes from 100 pixels to 300 pixels immediately. So it could be great to have some sort of, you know, interpolation where the width slowly keeps increasing, you know, from 100, 110, 120, 200, 250, yeah. So we can probably try to introduce that effect, and that's what I would like to do now. So how can we do that? Look, let's pay attention to how simple transitions are. With transition, you type transition, and then you need to specify some properties. So which property would you want to interpolate? So that's the width. Width, here you go. And then how long the effect will take? For instance, 1 second. And then what type of what style of the transition you want to apply. I'll go back to that point in a minute. Yeah. So you need these three properties. First of all, the CSS rule you want to interpolate, the duration of the interpolation, and the eventual style. Yeah. So that's what we want to apply. All right. So now let's see what happens if I refresh the page, just in case, and I hover the box. Look. You see? So now the effect is less aggressive. It's probably a bit more user-friendly. We set up the original state and the eventual state, 100, 300, and then the web browser will interpolate that property, the width, during 1 second. That's the way transitions works. Do you have any questions? You see, it's pretty simple, right? You see how much improvement you can get by just adding a single line of CSS to your code. So now, what linear means? That is, since that talks about the animation speed. So imagine that this is a car, yeah, and the car moves from one position to the other. So linear means the speed will be constant. Yeah, whatever the speed is, it will be constant from the first to the last pixel. Yeah, that's obviously okay. There is nothing wrong with that, but technically speaking, it feels a bit odd because we humans, we are not used to constant speeds. Yeah, of course, constant speeds are around, but for instance, let's think about hitting a ball or driving a car. Guys, do you drive a car at constant speed? So if you were driving a car at constant speed, that will imply that if you are you're stopping at a traffic light, you are driving at 0 miles per hour, and then you accelerate to 60 miles per hour, you know what that will mean, right? You'll be dead. Because at constant speed, that will imply that you will move from a stop position to full throttle in 0 seconds. So the acceleration will be brutal. Yeah, you will become a black hole or something a bit philosophic. I don't know. Yeah, but that's what linear speed means. In reality, that's not the way it works, right? When you want to start the engine, when you want to start your car and you want to start moving, so you accelerate, yeah, and then once you see a pedestrian going through, in front of you, you decelerate, you stop slowly. Yeah, so that's what we call easing. Easing means you start getting a speed, eventually you go to full speed, and once you are going to reach the end of your journey, you stop. Yeah? So your speed is going down and down and down. So let's see if we can actually spot any difference. I'll tell you something, it's a bit hard to see any difference because, first of all, my laptop is probably not at its best shape, but there is actually difference. There is actually difference. Something you can do, guys, if you want to get full control on your animations and your transitions, is to slow them down. How can you slow animations down? Look, in DevTools, sorry, I'm on the wrong side. So if you go to DevTools, another reason why you have DevTools always open with you, you will find at the bottom, maybe not at the bottom, depending on your resolution, you will find a tab near the console called Animations. When you click on the Animation tab, you can slow animations down. You see by default they run at full throttle, full speed, 100%, but you can slow them down. And that's quite convenient for debugging purposes. So for instance, can anyone tell me how long the animation will take to complete now? 4 seconds, that's correct, Lauren. Because if by default at full speed it takes 1 second, if we run it at 25% speed, that means it will take 4 times longer, right? So that will take 4 seconds. Look. It's still a bit hard to see the easing I have applied, but I hope you can notice it. Yeah. So then you can play, you can definitely have full control with the animation. Of course, if I select 10%, that means the animation will take 10 seconds to complete. Yeah? You see it's expanding, 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 and eventually after 10 seconds it will settle. So likewise, when I move my cursor out from the box will return to its original width. Any questions? Also, yep. Oh. Yep. Yep. That's correct. Yeah, that was actually what I wanted to talk next. So that's good timing, actually. So look, here we're talking about basic transition styles. Linear is there are few obviously. But imagine that you want to run something super complex, something super cool to impress your customers. So look, what you can do is you can select your box in DevTools, and then look, if I move to where the styles for the box are declared, look, there is an option to open cubic visor editor, whatever that means. And then look at how cool this is. Because here I can play with different animation styles, you see? And DevTools is previewing how the animation is gonna look like. So you see, I can even look at how cool this is, guys. I can even play with the animation speed, and I can even bounce animation. Look at how cool this is gonna be. No, that's not what I wanted to do. All right, let me try to remember. No, sorry, I picked the wrong one. I think it was something like that. You see, now the ball is bouncing a bit. Well, so before expanding, it collapses a bit, and then when it reaches the limit, it expands a bit more, and then eventually it goes back to the original position. So look, if I accept that, now the animation is a bit weird, but please pay attention. I'm running the animation at 10% speed, so we can enjoy all the details. So I'll tell you what's going to happen. As soon as I hover the box, now the box is 100. The width is 100 pixels. It will shrink a bit, so it will become slightly, shorter, maybe 80, 85 pixels. Then it will start expanding until 300 pixels, and it will go beyond a bit, 320, 330, and then it will go back to 300. Yeah. So look, it's like a spring. You know a spring, the effect the spring does. So that's pretty much the same thing. Look, well, you see, it's collapsing and then expanding, 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 expanding. So once it goes until the end, it will move. You see, it moves a bit beyond, and then it remains, in a steady position of 300 pixels. If I move my cursor away, it will be pretty much the same thing. It will expand a bit more, and then it will start collapsing. You see, and now collapsing. So you can definitely perform some complex animations using this cubic visor interactive tool. And I got a question for you. What happens if I refresh the page? Will these cool changes remain or not? No, of course not. Of course not. So if I want to keep that, remember you need to go back to VS Code, and then you need to paste it. Yeah, and then the changes will remain. I told you this morning I wasn't a big fan of adding comments because you got tests. When talking about CSS, it is more complicated to add tests to automate CSS testing. Because of that, in some occasions, I'm a bit more flexible with comments, because the thing is, that's pretty cool. But if you land in a new project and you see that, I mean, unless you are someone really special dealing with CSS, no one is going to understand what the hell that means, right? So it is fine to try to explain to your colleagues. So running a bouncing animation, something like that. Yeah? Unless you give some idea to your colleagues about what the hell is expected to happen there. Cool. Any questions? No? All right, so that's pretty much it about transitions. Yeah, you see how simple they are. Literally one line of CSS, and suddenly you got something quite cool. Transitions, even though they are quite simple, they have some limitations, of course. The main one is about how they are triggered. Transitions are reactive. That means they work once something happens, once something changes. You need to trigger, the user has to trigger an action. So for instance, in here, I had to hover the box. Yeah? In other occasions, you may want to trigger a transition when you click on a button, when you navigate, I don't know. Yeah? So you definitely need to trigger an action because you set up two CSS rules with 100% and then later on with 300. So the transition will simply interpolate between these two states, between 100 and 300. However, what happens if I want to run the same effect of moving the box, but I don't want to hover my box. I want to trigger the effect as soon as I refresh the page without any kind of user interaction. In that particular use case scenario, transitions may not work, yeah, because I cannot set up two states. I mean, what are the two states? Something like that. I don't think that's gonna work. Yeah? So, whenever you want to have more control on your interpolated stuff, is when we should start talking about animations. Let me show you about how animations work. They're a bit more complicated, but way more powerful. So with animations, you type animation instead of transition. Then you type the animation name. I'll show you what that means in a minute. For instance, expand box. Then you type the duration of the animation, 1 second. Then the animation type. And we need to type something else, but I'll show you later on. So the most important thing here is the animation name. Expand box, that's the name I just made up. So what we need to do with that expand box token? We need to somewhere else type keyframes, then the name of the animation, expand box, and now we can set up the different stages of the animation. So for instance, from with 100 pixels to with 300 pixels. You see, I'm setting two keyframes, the original one and the final one. So now, if I refresh the page, let's see what happened. It's happened very quickly, but if you pay attention, I don't need to hover the box. As soon as I refresh the page, my box is expanding. Let me slow it down a bit. Of course, you can slow down and not just transitions, but also animations. So if I slow it down a bit, you will see that the animation runs automatically. Do you see, though, anything weird? What happens, guys, when the animation completes? Correct. It snaps back to the original shape. Yeah? In other words, the animation runs fantastic. However, once the animation is complete, the browser is reverting it. That's the default behavior of animations. I personally never understood why that's part of the standard. Because to me, it is, I don't know, a bit weird to revert an animation. Of course, there are scenarios where you may want to revert an animation. But 90% of the time, you don't want to do that. So thankfully, there is a fourth attribute we can pass here, which is the direction of your animation. The one we are looking for, the one we'll be using most of the time, is called forwards. So that's the direction of the animation. Forwards means just run the animation once, and once the animation is complete, then just leave it as it is on its final state. Look, so now the animation is running, well, and then you see, so now the animation remains stable at its 300 pixels width. Any questions? Yes, of course. Yeah, I'll go back to the percentages in a minute. Yes, we can, and actually we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. Before answering that question, let me ask you guys another question. So imagine that I want my default width, the width of my box, to be 100 pixels. That's okay, it works. But imagine that business wants to change that from 100 to 150 pixels. I'm just talking about the width, I don't care about the height. Can you tell me how many lines of code do we need to change in order to set up the default width of the box from 100 to 150 pixels?
Hello?
Oh,
sorry guys. Sorry guys, I lost you. Sorry. Just give me a second.
Let's type so we can hear you.
Sorry.
We can.
I know, you cannot hear me. Hello.
Hey, we've got you back.
Sorry guys, my headset died. Give me a second, let me try to connect again. So don't do anything, just hold on. All right, I'm gonna leave it, guys. Sorry, I cannot use my headset. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna carry on with the current setup. Yeah. So cool. I don't know what I was talking about right now. Oh yeah. So I said that imagine that you want to change the default width of your box from 100 to 150 pixels. So then my question is, how many lines of CSS you need to amend? Two. That's correct. Line number 6 and line number 12. You know, guys, that when you do coding, you should try to avoid duplication. Yeah, because duplication just makes everything more complicated. So in order to keep a hassle-free piece of CSS, can we get rid of one of them?
Yeah, we can get rid of the first one.
The first one.
And we can put 100% to the 2.
Okay, fair enough.
And write 150 on the width on the box on top. I don't know if you could hear me.
Fair enough.
No, the opposite. I would say.
Why the opposite?
I lost you somewhere. I don't know.
So,
sorry, it's really bad. Go on.
Guys, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, there are two options. Either we remove that rule or we remove that rule. Yeah. So I think naturally speaking, you may be keen to get rid of the one on top because then your animation is easier to understand, right? From 150 pixels to 300 pixels. And I'll tell you something, that's gonna work. Look, if I refresh my page, it works. And then everything is okay. But now, let me show you what the problem is. Imagine that business or our UX specialist is complaining that the animation runs very quickly. If a user is joining our web app by the first time, there are so many things happening at the same time that it's hard to get his or her attention. So what UX is requesting us is to delay the animation a bit. Of course, we can do that. There is a property called animation delay where we can wait a bit. Before we trigger the animation. So let's see what happens if we delay the animation 1 second. Be careful, guys, because we are running at 25% speed, so it will take 4 seconds in reality, which makes everything a bit more difficult. But anyway, look what happened. 1, 2, what the hell? Do you see that? So by default, the box is broken. You see? So you need to be careful. Because the animation properties will only apply once we start running the animation. So in other words, if there is a delay before we trigger the animation, these properties are gonna be ignored. So we need to be careful. why the box fills all the available width, because that's a div, right? So divs, you know, by default, divs take all the available space on the screen. So we need to be careful. In this particular case, it works better on the other way around. So with 150 pixels, and then we can get rid of the original keyframe. So it doesn't matter if we run the animation immediately, if we wait 1 second or 10 seconds. That will be the default width, and once the animation triggers, then we'll change it. We'll change the width. So now if I start again, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it naturally grows. And it remains at its final state of 300 pixels eventually. Questions?
No.
No.
Vicky said before if we can add percentage. Yes, we can add numbers. You can add numbers.
Yeah, saying things like as you have it. I don't know if you heard me. Like to have it as you have it, but then add just 100% instead of 2.
Yep, of course you can do that. And of course you can add some intermediate states, which is quite cool, right?
Yeah, 20, 15, whatever.
So you can say 20% the width is 50 pixels, so that's a bit weird. 80% the width is 400. Yep, and then eventually 300. So the box will shrink at the beginning, it will expand massively, and then it will shrink a bit at the end. So let's see if that's okay. Look, we are waiting, and now it will shrink. You see, pop, and now expanding a lot, and now it will shrink a bit. Here you go. You see? So you can definitely set up as many keyframes, as many states as you want.
Can we use viewports here?
Can we use viewports? Of course. If you want, you can set up a media query, right?
Media query.
So yeah, with a media query, you can actually customize the behavior of your animation depending on the mobile screen size, whatever. Yeah. And
okay.
Can we change multiple properties at the same time? Can I change, guys, the height as well alongside the width?
Yeah.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
That's the beautifulness about animation, right? Like it is very easy to change. Imagine that you're working for Pixar, for Disney, you're creating a movie, right? So obviously you need to look after many things at the same time, right? So if you do something like that, so now the box is gonna change. It's gonna change a lot in different width and height. You see? So you can definitely play with multiple CSS properties. And the last question: can we change, guys, the color?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So for instance, all right, give me a color you like.
Blue.
Blue. That's a bit boring. Something funnier, guys.
Maroon.
Which one?
Maroon.
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 Oh.
Maroon. Maroon. Sorry, maroon. Sorry, guys. The audio is a bit poor now. That's my fault. Maroon. All right. Give me another one.
Aqua.
Which one? Aqua.
Yeah.
All right. And a final one.
Olive green.
Which one?
Olive.
Olive. Fantastic. Cool. That's great, right? So we got 4 different colors: pink, maroon, aqua, and olive. So now look. If I refresh the page, it's pink. It will become maroon. And then aqua. You see? And finally olive. So that's quite cool, right? So you can definitely play with colors. Can we play with...
a rave box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can
I
we...
want to say something.
Yeah.
I have seen like around, and I've faced it myself. Like sometimes I see people write an animation and then write the animation name animate, and then they forget. And then you repeat yourself, your name again, another animation, animate, and then everything is mixed.
So you mean that we should keep the animation names unique?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so guys, remember CSS is different to JavaScript. In JavaScript, you can easily control the scope of your JavaScript files. But you remember what we talked about in the past, right? If you create a div, every single div in your app is going to be affected. So the same thing applies with the keyframes, yeah? So that keyframe will become global. So you need to be careful. You need to be careful. So I'll tell you something. If you want to keep that animation private to your component, for instance, that's the app component. So I will do something like that personally. I'm name spacing my animation name. So then, I mean, that's not rocket science. Someone may break it, but you know, at least I'm name spacing my my expand box. So if someone has another component called contacts, then hopefully that person will do something like that. Contacts and then expand box, and it won't be affected by our app expand box keyframe. Anything else?
No.
I got the final question for you. Can we animate the display property? So imagine that we want to display the box by default. At 20%, we want to hide it. And then we want to show it again. And then we want to hide it again. You see, we can play with the visibility. We want to play with the visibility of the box. You know, display none, display block. All right, let's see what happened. Let's see what happened. So if I refresh the page, is it working?
No.
No, it is. It's not working. Classic mistake, guys, and junior developers. Classic mistakes. Not all the CSS properties can be animated. So what's the rule of thumb? The rule is a property can be animated if it can be interpolated. So for instance, why the width can be animated? Because we can have 100, 101, 102. Why the color can be animated? Because a color, in reality, RGB, it's a number. So we can progressively change the color. However, what's in between of display none and display block? Do we have anything? There is nothing in between, right? Display is like being pregnant. Either you are pregnant or you are not pregnant. You cannot be half pregnant. So we cannot animate display. But now the question is, what happens if I want to hide the visibility of the box during the transition sometimes? Do you know any equivalent property that we can interpolate in CSS?
Display none?
Wrong. You cannot use display.
Opacity.
Which
So
one?
what was the question?
I want to
connection
hide.
dropped.
I want to hide my box in the middle of the animation. But
Opacity.
opacity. That's correct, guys. Opacity. Brilliant. That's correct because it's a number. Yeah, it's a number. So we can definitely change the number. Interestingly enough, from 0 to 1. This is one of the things I never understood about CSS. Why the majority of the properties change, for instance, when talking about percent from 0 to 100, but opacity moves from 0 to 1. Anyway, who cares, right? So opacity is a number from 0 to 1, so we can definitely animate it. So now the box will become hidden at some point, and it will become visible eventually. So look, if I refresh the box, if I refresh the page, you will see visible, hidden, you see? And now it's back because the opacity can be animated because it's a numerical property in CSS. Anything else?
Yeah, just for me then, just to double check. So with expand box, that's kind of like a pre-existing property like width or height and whatnot. And all you'd have to do to make it unique is just add a dash and then a word of your choice before it.
Absolutely. I mean, you can type whatever you want here. You can type max if you want, right? And that's going to work. But the problem is, what happens if you or someone else declares the same animation with the same name, max? So you're one is gonna override the other. So that's why animation names should remain unique. How can you ensure your animation names remain unique?